I'd like to welcome everyone out tonight here to the Langston Center. My name is Casey Marlar, and I will be moderating our event tonight. The League of Women's Voters have invited us and our guests to tonight's issue forum on the Johnson City charter changes. And without further ado, I will introduce the president of the League of Women's Voters of Northeast Tennessee. Please welcome Ms. Gwen Medetol.
Thank you, Casey, and thanks to WJHL for working with us to stream this. Thanks to the Langston Center for giving us this wonderful historic site to use, and to all of our participants. We thank you for taking the time to come and help us understand more information about these amendments. A little bit about the League of Women Voters. Our organization is over 100 years old. It was formed when women got the right to vote, to help them be educated voters. Our local league is a little newer, but the League of Northeast Tennessee, as you'll see the yellow counties up to the very tip of Tennessee, so we're several counties. We have about 66 active members, another 200 who get the mailing list and come to events and things. Information about us is on that back table. You may have seen it as you came in, so there's more information. And there's information on voting too, because that's our big issue. Who we are, our mission, I love this, is empowering voters and defending democracy. Our vision is a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the competence to participate. And that's part of what we're doing here tonight. Our value is that we believe in the power of women and men, we do welcome men, to create a more perfect democracy. We are fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. Now, we're a nonpartisan organization. That's different from being bipartisan. We do not support any candidate or any political party. Our individual members are free to do that on their own time, but when we speak for the League, we do not speak in favor or against a party or a politician. We want to inform voters on the candidates and the issues so they can make the choices that align best with their values. We do have some guidelines for our forum. First of all, this is not a debate. There will be no winners or losers here. That's not the way we're doing this. We are sharing information, and education is our goal. And so that is why we have so many people up here who know so much to help us with this. Second, we're not going to be able to take questions from the audience. We just won't have time to do that. Our discussion will follow a very structured format that I will share in just a second. And civility and respect are expected from both the participants and the audience. So, here is our complicated format, but it's not, and I'm going to decode it for you. First, we're going to have an overview, because in talking to people, I found out that many people don't even realize that Johnson City has a charter or what would be in it. And so we're going to get some context for the discussion to follow. Second, we're going to have a discussion of the amendments 1, 2, 3, and 4, one at a time. We have people here with different perspectives on whether these are good or not so good, or what they think of them. And so we're going to have one person speak from each perspective on each amendment. Now, when you vote, you will be voting on each amendment separately. It's not a package deal. So when you're taking notes, which I'm sure you will be, please think about each one individually and whether this is something that you think is good for our city or whether not. Okay, the third thing is that we will be alternating. We want to be very fair to everyone. So we'll be alternating between the two perspectives. We're just called A and B. And so it'll be A who won the coin toss and then B. The next amendment will be B and then A and then B, back and forth. Just be sure it'll be we'll have the amendments posted so you can keep track. We have a timekeeper, actually 3 lovely timekeepers in the front, and they will flash signs that say 30 seconds and the big red sign that says stop. So, and they know that. So that will keep us on time. You'll notice, if you're looking really carefully at my chart, that the last amendment, number 4, they get 6 whole minutes instead of 5. That's because it's a little more complex, and so we're giving them just a little bit more time, so that's not a mistake. So just to reiterate our guidelines, the most important part is that this is information sharing, and education is our goal, not that one side, wins or loses, and that civility and respect are what we want from both the participants and our audience. So thank you very much, and we'll let the forum begin.
Gwen, thank you very much, and thank you for overseeing the League of Women Voters. One concern I have is that I get the 30-second or the stop cue.
And can I interrupt you a second?
You bet.
I forgot one to have. Please hold your applause to the end, too, because there'll be so many opportunities that we would run out of time. Sorry.
No problem. As Gwen mentioned, we are going to begin with a bit of an overview on the city charter. And for that, we please welcome to the podium the Assistant City Manager, Mr. Steve Willis. See, Gwen, we can't even wait that long.
Thank you, Casey. Thanks to the League of Women Voters and everyone here in attendance tonight for having us here. I'm honored to represent the city here tonight. My name is Steve Willis. I'm an Assistant City Manager. So let's talk about what the charter is. The city charter, by definition, is a document that defines the structure, power, duties, and authority of a local government. It's granted by state constitution or statute, and it allows municipalities to create their own governance structure as long as it does not conflict with state or federal law. So Johnson City, its charter was adopted in 1939, so 85 years ago. So I think we all can agree that in 85 years, much has changed. In 1953, the state of Tennessee amended its constitution to allow what we now recognize as a home rule municipality. And shortly after that, in May of 1955, Johnson City adopted, through a voter referendum, the home rule municipality form of government. There are 14 home rule municipalities in the state of Tennessee. Chattanooga, Memphis, and Knoxville are all examples of home rule municipalities. So as we look at how we put these things together, if we can go to the next slide, these proposed changes were brought forward by staff. Our city commission has 4 strategic goals: excellence in government, economic vitality, quality of place, and future-ready infrastructure. So we examined our charter for potential changes that we could make to help enhance those strategic goals as outlined by our city commission. And we feel like this charter should be a living document. 85 years is a long time. And as we all know, things have changed significantly over that period of time, not just in society, but what employees' expectations are, as well as the expectations of our general public. But the great thing about a home rule municipality is it requires a voter referendum to make these changes. So it is up to the voters as to whether or not any of these 4 will ultimately be approved. Let's take a look at the referendums themselves. Ordinance 4875-24 relates to our budget advertisement. It would remove the requirement for first printing of our preliminary working budget in the newspaper. Our city charter requires that the city commission receive that first working document on the first Tuesday in May, which means that advertisement has to occur 3 days prior to that, which is on Saturday prior to that Tuesday. Quite honestly, in staff's opinion, that working document provides very little value. We have it posted on our website. It's readily available. The second printing is required 10 days prior to the final reading of the budget document. That is state law, so that will not change. And as I said, the working budget is available on our website 24/7. If you go to the City of Johnson City website, which by the way has just been revamped, you go to the Government tab, you click Budget, and you'll see the last 4 years of our approved budget on the website. The next ordinance is 4876-24. This would reduce the number of ordinance readings required for approval from 3 to 2. But I would like to point out that in July of 2023, the General Assembly passed a new law that required all governing bodies for each public meeting to reserve a period of time for the public to comment on any items on the agenda. So that was a significant change that just happened a little over a year ago. Under our current system that requires 3 readings, public hearing occurs on the second reading. So the City Commission would actually take a vote before hearing from the public unless the public had signed up as part of this new law. The change that we recommended fits with the majority of municipalities across the state. 90+% only require 2 readings. And I think it's important to point out that this would mean public hearing would occur at first reading. So before the City Commission actually would vote on the ordinance, they would hear from the public with 100% certainty. The next ordinance, 4877, would remove a 90-day limitation for temporary assignments. The department director would make a recommendation to the city manager on the length of the temporary assignment. I would like to point out this does not apply to temporary employees. Much has changed in 85 years. I've said that 3 times now, so that's kind of a continuing theme. FMLA didn't exist in 1939. FMLA would allow for 12 weeks of protected leave time for an employee who has worked a full year and have worked 1,250 hours during that year. The city is unique in that we are a full-service city. We have public safety, fire, and police that are paramilitary organizations, meaning they have a rank structure. For example, in the fire department, you have district chief, you have lieutenant, you have driver, engineer, or sergeant, and then you have firefighter. Let's just use the example of a lieutenant that takes FMLA for a serious health condition. In that particular case, a driver engineer would be placed in the lieutenant capacity for a temporary assignment while that employee was out on leave. Then a firefighter would be promoted into an interim assignment into that driver engineer space. So that happens very routinely for us in those 2 particular departments. Under the current charter, every 90 days we have to renew that appointment. It's just an unnecessary administrative burden. We do have seasonal employees that work in the city, most of those in Parks and Recreation, which I have direct responsibility for in my portfolio. And without those seasonal employees, we simply could not make things happen during the summertime. We just wrapped up summer camps, and we use a wide variety of students, not only from our high schools, but also from our colleges to help make those camps happen. So we feel like this would certainly eliminate an unnecessary administrative burden. Ordinance 4878. This would move all municipal elections to August, and would keep all of our local elections together. Our presidential county primaries in March, state federal primaries, county and municipal general in August, and our state federal general in November. Currently, if you look at the school boards based on a state ruling a couple of years ago, I believe it was, are now partisan. So for example, in Washington County, in March, you had the county school board primary. In August, you will have the county general along with the city school board primary. And then in November, the city school board general election. So that's 4 times that voters go to the polls for those particular items. And we feel like that there will be a greater focus on local issues by bringing all of those things together. So some other considerations as it relates to this referendum. There's no budget impact. There is a slight savings of about $3,500 that the city would save from not being required to print that first budget advertisement. It would reset the calendar for 2 currently sitting city commissioners because under Tennessee state law, elected terms cannot be shortened, and it would reset the calendar for 4 sitting school board members for the same reason. You cannot shorten the term of an elected official. So that's all the information I have related to the referendum, and I thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Steve, thank you very much. So we will begin with a quick introduction of our guests who will be speaking on each of the issues individually, one person per side, per issue, and not necessarily in this order, so I'll just kind of have you raise your hand as I introduce you. We will begin closest to the mic stand here, and we'll begin with Lisa Luster, who is the Executive Director of the Johnson City Area Home Builders. And next to her right, John Getz is the Vice President of Community and Government for the Chamber of Government Relations Council. And Bob Cantler is the President and CEO of the Johnson City, Jonesboro, Washington County Chamber of Commerce. Also with us this evening from the Coalition to Protect the People's Voices, we'll begin with Matthew Paul, who is the organizer of Ride JC. Jacob Llewellyn is a resident of Johnson City. Dennis Prater is a member of the Northeast Tennessee Democratic Socialist of America. And Raven Olson is on the executive committee for the Washington County Democratic Party. We did have a coin flip and before the proceedings to decide who would go first. And as we explained in the rules, each side will have an opportunity to go first as we begin. The winner of the coin flip was the representatives from Johnson City, Washington County Chamber of Commerce. And I will read the first referendum. This is Ordinance 4875 as it will appear on the ballot. Shall the charter of the City of Johnson City be amended to allow publication of the proposed budget ordinance once at least 10 days prior to when the governing body will consider final passage of the proposed budget ordinance? We will begin with Mr. Bob Cantler.
Thank you, Casey. And thank you, Gwen and the League of Women Voters for having the conversation. For a community to be healthy, we need to have these vital conversations, and we need to be able to discuss things, and we may not have the same reference or viewpoints, but having the conversation, I think, creates a lot more civility and opportunity for us to grow as a community. In regards to the budget, 85 years ago, we did not have the internet. It would be short of saying, okay, now the budget needs to be put on parchment and nailed to a door in the downtown before there was the newspaper to put that into. Over the time of 85 years, we've evolved, and today you have access to the budget. And let me read to you real quickly. A draft budget is to be provided to the Board of Commissioners on or before the first Tuesday of May, as Steve said earlier. The Board of Commissioners then participates in an extensive review of the city's budget and must approve a balanced budget of 3 readings on or before June 30th of the current fiscal year. A balanced budget, that's another thing that's very crucial. Our budget is 24 pages long. It is a very detailed document. It includes a lot of information on capital projects, operations projects, quasi-government funding, school funding, and the great thing about what is with the website is I can go on and I can see it from fiscal year 22 through 25. I have access to all the capital plans. If I had a question for one of the capital plans, I could know what budget item I could come to ask somebody from the city. But we've evolved to a point that putting something in the newspaper an additional time when people aren't subscribing to the newspaper as often, that having this information at your fingertips on the website provides the opportunity for our community to review it, have access, get into the detail, and understand what is in the budget. It's a budget that's about $118 million when you look at all the capital and operation needs. It's a very sophisticated document. And it's something that requires a little bit more time than just a summary that you can print in the newspaper. So again, this was something that I felt was very important in a time when you didn't have access to this. But now that we have the internet and we have the websites and we have these documents, and you can actually print these documents from the website, they're a PDF, and then from there you can evaluate it, mark it up, do whatever you want to with that. And as I said, because of that, we feel that having to publish it a second time in the newspaper, the $3,500 saving, that's a rounding error for the whole budget, but it's a little something. But it's for anyone who's looking at what our society and our community is doing, is saying, okay, at least I know I can access that information at any time, 24/7, and I'm not dependent upon something being published in the newspaper.
Next, speaking on referendum ordinance 4875 will be Matthew Paul.
So I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. I'm also grateful for everyone who is listening here online. It's great to see so many people exercising their democratic right to know. There's been a lot of words flying around lately about what people think the coalition believes. So tonight, my fellow coalition members and I want to focus on the facts around these changes to the city charter. As citizens, the budget is critical for us to understand. It's been said, a city's budget is its statement of priorities and values. It's the most important piece of legislation passed all year. When I first saw the measure on the sample ballot, the certified statement from the chief financial officer stood out to me, quote, "This ordinance will result in a savings of approximately $3,500 to the city and its taxpayers." $3,500 is a lot of money to me, but putting that into the context of the general fund paints a very different picture. $3,500 out of $166 million in the total fund means that they're pushing a charter change to save 0.002%. $166 million was hard for me to grasp, so I decided to see what it would look like if it were a family's budget. In Johnson City, the average household makes $55,000 a year. Looking at the general fund, Public Works would be $5,600, Fire Department would be $4,700, Police, $5,500. How much would our budget advertisement be? $1.16 for the year. $1.16. That's less than the price of a cup of coffee. We've heard what the city states will be the cost savings of this resolution. Now let's look at the price we will pay if we vote yes on this measure. A recent study found that when local papers stopped reporting on city government, the cost of issuing bonds rose by 5.5 points. I quote, "When local newspapers aren't there to hold governments accountable, we see costs increase due to a lack of scrutiny over local deals." Looking at a recent example, the city issued $35 million in bonds to help cover the West Walnut Corridor. If the cost rose by 5.5 points, that would mean the city would have to pay an extra $18,500 to borrow the same amount of money. Voting yes could end up costing us more than the CFO's certified statement reports. But there's an even bigger cost to the citizens of Johnson City, that of the ability to participate in democratic budget making. Right now, the city is required to publish the preliminary budget 3 days before sending it to the commission. For fiscal year 2024, that was published 47 days before it passed. Voting yes would allow the city to not publish the budget at all until 10 days before the final reading. A 2021 citizen survey reported that half of Johnson City people feel the government isn't being open and transparent to the public. Only 53% think the government is being honest. Voting no will allow the citizens of Johnson City more time to engage in the budget-making process and keep the government accountable to the people. I want to speak to a couple of arguments that I've heard in favor of squeezing the publishing requirement of the budget. The commission has said that publishing a preliminary budget can be confusing because it changes. To that I say, of course it changes. That's why we want time to give feedback. Asking for change 10 days before the finished budget is passed won't make a difference. I've also heard the commission say that people can always access the budget online. I was surprised to find out, but 14% of families in Johnson City don't have access to broadband at home. That's 11,000 people who cannot access it via the internet. We need multiple ways for every person to engage with the budget. Additionally, the measure is written so that even if it is published online, it only has to be 10 days before the final reading. A vote in favor of this proposal is a vote for reducing the city's obligation to give notice to its people. Voting yes might save $3,500 a year, but cost us far more in future borrowing and our participation in democratic budget making. A vote for no could keep borrowing costs down and, more importantly, keep the City Commission transparent and accountable to the people. We think it's pretty clear the people of Johnson City will see these measures for what they are. I'd hate to tell my children that we voted to sacrifice our democratic right to save the price of a cup of coffee. Please vote no on this ballot measure.
And with that, we will move on to referendum number 2. Remember, this is as it will appear on the ballot. This is referendum ordinance 4876, and it reads, shall the charter of the City of Johnson City be amended to allow adoption of city ordinances after 2 separate readings, at least 1 week apart, and an open session, rather than 3 readings, at least 1 week apart, and an open session, as is currently required. Beginning this ordinance for us will be Jacob Llewellyn.
Sorry. Sorry about that. I expected us to go in a slightly different order. All right. Good evening. I'm Jacob Llewellyn. I'm a resident of Johnson City. I've been here for about 10 years, between going to school, working in ministry, and now working in information technology. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this event and allowing the citizens to be better informed about the issues that they will see on the ballot this August. First, I want to clearly outline, even though we have had the measure read to us, I want to clearly outline what this ordinance does. As it currently stands, the Johnson City Charter requires that ordinances be read 3 times, with at least a week between the first and the final reading. The proposed change would reduce the number of readings from 3 to 2. In practical terms, this currently looks like the Commission having a first hearing and votes with no official public hearing section. Then, the second reading is conducted 2 weeks later with public hearing, followed by a final reading another 2 weeks after that. This means an individual hearing about an ordinance for the first time on social media or in the newspaper following the first reading, which is oftentimes how people hear about upcoming ordinances, would have 4 weeks to make provisions to attend one of the 2 upcoming public hearings. The proposed change would reduce the number of readings from 3 to 2. Under the proposed language, that same individual would have under 2 weeks to research the topic, form a coherent opinion, arrange childcare, or any of the many other things they may need to make it possible for them to fully participate in our local government. With that understanding, this change may move at the speed of business, as the Commission likes to say, but I worry that it may not move at the speed of a busy working parent attempting to arrange childcare on a tight budget so that they can attend meetings impacting the zoning of the lot next to their home. When the agenda for the City Commission meeting may come out only days before the actual meeting, many citizens rely on first readings and subsequent press coverage to know when ordinances directly impacting their neighborhood or their broader community come up. Despite what the Commission may say, most people are too busy working to pay ever-increasing rent and running a household to pay diligent attention to every commission and every committee meeting going on in local government. If this change were to go through, it would cut the window these citizens have to make their concerns known in half. Frankly, this follows a pattern of challenges the city government has with including working class citizens. Considering of the 26 boards and committees I could find, only 6 of them have regular, predictable schedules with meetings after 5 p.m. In contrast, 14 of the meetings that occur regularly happen between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. I fear passing this change to the charter will only increase the challenges working families have to engage in the civics of our city. I'd now like to address some of the arguments the Commission has made to justify the reduction of ordinance readings. First, they use surrounding cities like Kingsport and Bristol as examples. However, Nashville has 3 readings. Following the Council's logic, why not use them as an example? Now, my point is not to say we should model one city or the other. My point is to underscore the juvenile rationality of all the other kids are doing it kind of logic. Every city will be different and have different needs. I don't think reducing the time citizens have to consider ordinances will meet the needs of our city. Second, they say that the changes bring us in line with state law. I want to clarify, we are not in breach of some state law. This is a state minimum. This is a suggested requirement. We are free to do better than the requirements. I want a local government that goes beyond state code to make sure the people's voice is heard, that our voices are heard. My final point is that we have evidence of the importance of these 3 reading process from ordinances voted down in the final reading just a few weeks ago. At the June 20th Commission meeting, a piece of property on Princeton Road was up for rezoning to accommodate additional housing. On the 3rd reading, the neighbors were able to make their concerns heard, and the rezoning was struck down. If it was so vital in this situation, when are other times that it may be just as vital? I've outlined the changes. I've shown you examples, the real-world impact of this. The city commissioners say that these ordinances move at the speed of business, but they do not work for workers. The ordinance doesn't work for me, and it won't work for us.
Thank you. Lisa Luster.
I do want to thank everybody for allowing me to come and speak on this tonight. There are several things that have been going on federally, on a state level, and locally. So as I've been looking at the ordinance changes, I do want to thank the League of Women Voters for allowing me to come. I want to make sure that I thank Bob with the Chamber of Commerce for making sure that I was aware of certain things, and I appreciate him always having my back on that when I'm not necessarily looking. What happens with the 3 down to 2 on the ordinance change, on the readings? Yes, it does put us in line with 90% of the municipalities in the state of Tennessee because the law was changed. What we are finding in the building world, because what I represent is residential and light commercial building industry from Johnson County to Greene County. I also assist with all of the other counties across the state of Tennessee. So we have multiple home builder associations across the state of Tennessee, and we do talk about things amongst each other. When you're looking at a development or general contractors that are bringing in plans that will need to then go to the city commission for the readings to occur and for votes to be made, please understand that what happens first is that all of our people have to have their information, full documentation, all contracts, everything in with site plans, a minimum of 30 days prior to a city commission meeting. In that 30 days, those site plans go to the city planning department. In that amount of time, the city planning department takes a look at it. If it's rezoning that is an issue that needs to be brought up, then that gives time for the notifications to go up, be posted as signage in anything that is required by the city of Johnson City to do 30 days prior to the city commission having their readings for this. When that occurs, if there is an issue, they have that amount of time to come back to our developers, our general contractors, our people that have put this information out to them before it then goes to the planning commission. So that's 2. Planning department can be discussed and talked to by anybody if they know that something is happening or if they feel like something is getting ready to be done in their community, in their area. And you all know as well as I do that everybody is watching. So the planning commission gets it, and people are encouraged to come to the planning commission meeting to hear what is being discussed, to know what is being looked at for that area, that development, whether it's a development out in Gray, in Washington County specifically, it doesn't matter. We have the opportunity at that planning commission to then speak up as well. When it then goes to the city commission, after it has been approved from planning department to the planning commission, and then it gets put on the agenda for the city commission to be able to do anything with it. What we have found in the past is that the first time it gets read, it's not necessarily always read correctly, or there's questions, but we're not allowed to speak at the first time. This will change. We will be allowed to stand up at the first reading and make our point known. We will be able, there are rules as to what we need to do in a community if things are being changed. Public hearings, we had that out again for Keebler, I think it was. We give the opportunity for the public to be able to state their case. By taking it from 3 down to 2, we are taking a potential 6-month lengthy process to get anything accomplished, and we're cutting that time because we are able to go for first reading, public comment, public hearing, second reading, public comment, public hearing, and the official vote. So what we're asking for is that this be considered, that you do vote yes for this, because it is going to help our community in the long run with taking that time frame down from 3 to 2. So we do ask for a yes vote from the building community.
We've reached the halfway point of our discussion tonight, and a quick refresher. Remember that the ultimate goal of our evening tonight is to inform and therefore spread these messages throughout the community and ultimately get more people out to vote for one side or the other. And might I take this moment to just thank everyone for being here tonight. What a tremendous crowd here inside the Langston Center. And one of the best places about our community is we are engaged. And not only are we engaged here, but through us, the message will get out to the rest of the community. And in the end, that is what tonight is really about. With that, we will move on to Johnson City Referendum Ordinance 4877. This is the third of 4 of these ordinances that appear on the ballot, and this one reads, shall the charter of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee be amended to allow the city manager the right and power, in addition to all other rights and powers, to make temporary appointments of employees for a period to be determined by the appropriate department director and approved by the city manager or his/her designee. And with that, we will invite John Getz to the microphone.
There we go. Of course, it'd mess up on me. You know, I think for mine, Steve did a really good job of outlining it. I think this is probably one of the more straightforward ones that we're considering this voting season. You know, when I think of good government, I think of efficient government, and I think of a government that's allowed to do what it needs to do, just like a business is allowed to do what it needs to do. By allowing for the, city manager to make appointments beyond the 90 days, like Steve said, it really does recognize our modern workforce. Right now, I've got a brother who is going to Kuwait. He's going to be there for a year. If he worked for the city of Johnson City and he worked for the fire department or for the police department, I think it's only appropriate for the city to be able to hold his position and bring somebody else to fill that while he's serving his country. I think about FMLA. In my career, I've worked with a lot of people as well who have had to go on temporary disability. During that time, government should be able to do what it needs to do to fill those positions. So I'm not going to be long. You won't need that. Again, I think this one is very straightforward. It's very common sense. It's to make sure that government can do what it needs to do, fill the positions it needs to fill, without being hamstrung and without making unnecessary burden on the government. So that's all.
And with that, we invite Dennis Prater to the microphone.
All right, thank you to everyone for listening. The most important thing I have to say is this: it doesn't matter what anyone says their intentions are regarding this referendum. What matters is the words that would be put in our charter. That's the main thing. What people need to know is that Section 45 of the charter gives the city manager the power to appoint, quote, all heads of departments and all subordinate officers and employees. And Section 45.11 says the city manager can make temporary appointments for a period of not more than 90 days. The proposed changes would go from, quote, not more than 90 days to, quote, a period to be determined. So this language is as open-ended as it is broad and sweeping. There is potentially no time limit to keeping someone as a temporary employee, and every city worker can, in theory, be made a temp with diminished job security and no benefits. The commissioners say they need to make this change because renewing temporary appointments every 90 days presents them with an undue administrative burden. However, to the best of my knowledge, the commissioners have never provided the public with an estimate of the average amount of time or resources spent signing off on renewals. Last week, the mayor and the commissioners sent Johnson City residents a letter that says, quote, we are talking about interim appointments required by the Family and Medical Leave Act and active military service. The problem is that their referendum does not talk about family and medical leave. It does not talk about military service anywhere. They could have written a referendum that would provide for appointments and exceptions in the cases of family and medical leave and military service. That would not have been an issue. Instead, the only thing this referendum talks about and what would be in our city charter for years to come is a period to be determined and nothing else. What matters is the words that would be put in the charter. I think city workers deserve to know that this proposal does include all of them, regardless of anyone's stated intention. Our city works better when city workers have decent compensation and a voice on the job. Working conditions in our city government should reflect our goals of having good jobs in our region. But the Commission's proposal opens the door to undermining good jobs. During the public hearing on these issues on April 4th, a commissioner said that having a 90-day limit to temporary appointments is, quote, a relic of when the charter was written to deal with political changes and nepotism and political hires and these sorts of things, end quote. The commissioner seems to be suggesting that corruption and misconduct are somehow no longer a temptation to those in power. Temp workers are more vulnerable because the city manager can simply not renew their contracts. This makes temps less likely to speak up if they see something that could harm the public. The powers the commissioners are requesting are too broad and sweeping. If this measure passes, the language of to be determined would be in our charter for the foreseeable future, and there is nothing preventing this measure from opening the door to abuse of temporary employment, either right after it happens or 20 or 50 years from now. I care about good jobs because I've spent too much of my life doing part-time, low-wage, and temp work. I don't know what other experience has been, but thinking about kind of the dynamics going on here, you know, when the commission makes these proposals about city workers, you tell me if they're caring about residents or powerful interests. If you believe we should carefully weigh the language we add to our city charter and guard against the potential for future abuses, vote no on referendum number 3.
Thank you. Now we will move on to the fourth ordinance. This is 4878. And this one, remember, is a little bit longer, a little bit more involved, and so each speaker will get 6 minutes to speak on this topic. Following the speakers, each will get a closing statement. And as will remain with the order, we'll go Raven and then Bob, and then for the closing statements, we'll go back to B for the closing statement first, and then A for the closing statement. This ordinance reads as follows. Shall the charter of the City of Johnson City be amended to, 1, move the election of the Board of Commissioners and Board of Education to first Thursday in August, beginning August 2028, to be sworn into office on the first Monday of September. 2, extend the November 2026 term expiration for Board of Commissioners and Board of Education members elected in November 2022 to the first Monday in September 2028. And 3, extend the November 2028 term expiration for Board of Commissioners and Board of Education members elected in November 2024 to the first Monday in September of 2030. We will begin with Raven Olson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Raven Olson. I've been a middle school and high school science teacher for 7 years now. I've lived in Johnson City for 10 years. I'm also a member of the Washington County Democratic Party Executive Committee. I want to spend some time, just a second, to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I'm a teacher, so I know how difficult it is to come out to things like this, even if they are after business hours. I do want to spend just a little bit of time going over the amendment in a little bit of detail. I get a little bit more time, so it is kind of a complicated one, so I want to spend just a little bit of time going into the details for just a second. So this amendment wants to do 3 things, okay? The first thing that this amendment would do is it would move the election for city commissioners from November to August, okay? And that would start in 2028. So I want you guys to keep in mind something important as I continue. For our commission members, the elections usually happen in November, and those are held every 2 years, and commission members serve 4-year terms, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, the second thing that this amendment would do is that it would extend the terms of those elected in the last election, all right, so 2022, from 4 to 6 years. Their term would end in 2028 instead of 26, okay? Just so we're clear, there's 2 out of the 5 currently sitting commission members who were elected in 22, so this amendment would extend their terms, again, by 2 years, okay? The other 3 sitting commission members, they're up for re-election this year. They've already served a 4-year term, okay? The third thing that this amendment would do is that it would extend the terms for the commissioners elected this year in November by 2 additional years, along with those that were elected in 2022, okay? So that's it. That's what this amendment does. Again, number 1, just change the date of the election. We want to hold the election in August instead of November. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to extend the term of the commission members elected in 2022, and then it's going to also extend the commission members' terms for those elected this year. Now, the commission has justified these changes by stating that moving the election from November to August will alleviate some confusion about local elections and somehow increase turnout for those elections. What we find, though, is exactly the opposite. The August ballot would include state and county elections and city commission and school board, while the November ballots are typically much smaller. So they're not going to be less confusing, they're going to be more confusing. We also know that turnout in August is much lower than turnout in November. On average, if you look at the past elections for several years, we find that it's about 30% lower turnout in August than it is in November, okay? So it's going to be a little bit more confusing, and it's going to be a lower turnout election. Now, the next point I'd like to address is simply this. What is going to happen in 2026? Well, we're not really sure. Nothing is mentioned about the 2026 election in the amendment. As far as we can tell, this amendment proposal would extend the city commissioner members' terms from 4 to 6 years, and it seems it would cancel the 2026 election cycle for city commissioners and school board members. Now, that sounds pretty extreme, okay? But the text of the amendment is pretty clear here. Extend the 2026 term expiration for board members elected in 22 to 28. Extend the 28 term expiration for members elected in 24 to 2030. Again, what's going to happen in 2026? The only connection I can make between changing the date of the election, and that was mentioned earlier today, is that giving themselves an extra 2 years in office, the city charter states explicitly that you can't shorten the term of city commission members. Okay, it also explains why the commissioners would want to implement these changes starting in 2028 and not the next election cycle in 2026, because then it would technically shorten the terms of the members elected in 22 by about 4 months. That's okay, thank you. Yeah. Johnson City voters are left to wonder how the commission giving themselves longer terms could possibly benefit the people of Johnson City, when in practical terms, they avoid having to answer to the voters when the city is rocked by ongoing federal investigations and generational policing. A vote for ballot proposal 4 is a vote for a power grab that silences Johnson City voters who want to make their voices heard at a time when confidence in our local government is at historic lows. The city commissioners and their connected friends have spent a lot of money trying to hide their plans behind half-hearted justifications and talking down to their own voters like we're not smart enough to understand what's actually happening. I ask that you exercise your political power and vote no on ballot proposal 4. Thank you.
Bob Cantler.
When the chamber first looked at, is this on? Silence itself, okay. When our government relations first looked at these 4 changes, this is the one that gave us the most pause, because there was a lot more intricacies to it. There was a variable that over a decade ago, we changed our elections from the spring to November. And the reason for doing that back then, there was some cost savings, there were some efficiencies, and a lot of things happened. The one thing we were unaware of was the unintended consequences of trying to run a campaign in November when you're competing against national candidates. There's not the opportunity for the advertising and the promotion and the way to come together as there would be as we had a municipal election. So we're not saying we're going to go back to spring like we did over a decade ago. We're saying let's move to August. And in August, what you will do is you'll be able to go and vote for your county representative, your county commissioner, your county school board representative for your district, your city school board that you're zoned for, and your city commission. So from that's where this simplification of having the elections in August, it's one less cycle that our candidates have to go through. God love you if you're running for office, because there's a lot of angst and a lot of funding and a lot of hoops you have to jump through, and it's a thankless job. I don't know how many phone calls the school board gets from angry parents, or how many phone calls our city commissioners get. It is a thankless job, but there are people who are willing to do this. And have I always been pleased with everything that the city commission has voted on? No. But I have to have trust in my commissioners, my representatives. I have to have dialogue with them when I say there's something that I'm not sure about, and they can offer that conversation back. There's a topic right now in the state legislature that says, hey, we want to make local elections partisan. And the state chamber and all the local chambers have come out against that. I don't care what party you are if you're going to fix the pothole on the street in front of my house. This is something they did with the school board and the TISA funding, but it's something that we feel does not need to be represented in our local elections. Again, by having the elections in August, it avoids the overshadowing effect that the national candidates and the campaigns have on our November candidates. It allows for a more informed and focused electorate. Additionally, the Chamber continues to encourage a higher voter turnout, and leveraging and streamlining the efficient election process can produce the turnout and enhance a sense of civic duty in our community. Our goal as a Chamber is the same as the League of Women Voters. We want more people to come out and vote. We want access to open elections, and I'm very proud of our election commission that's here and the work they do and everything they can to make sure everyone feels safe and honored and respected when they go into our polling places. That is the civility that this community has lived on. Johnson City is a very kind and authentic destination, and people are moving here because of that. As a political ecosystem, the Chamber and several of us feel by moving this election to the August election simplifies the process. It allows the candidates to get their local voice out stronger than they could be than they're doing it against a national candidate. And it simplifies the opportunity for you to go and vote for your county commission and your city commission at the same time. So we say, please vote yes for this change, and we're looking forward to the opportunities. Now, to touch on the extended terms for our commissioners and our school board, if I'm concerned they're not going to be as proficient and managing our community as they are in their initial term, why would I change my mind if we gave them the extra months? When this happened before and we changed the election, there was an extended term and the sky didn't fall. There were not errors made. There was not challenges for having the additional time for those who were serving in those offices. So again, we feel that there's not as much ill for having this opportunity, and we feel the upside will be so much greater by having the elections in August. So please vote yes for changing our election dates.
And that concludes our discussion here this evening. We will give the folks a chance to give one final closing statement. And so I will pass the microphone on to make sure that we have a strong microphone. And with the closing statement, what final comments do each of you have to summarize the recommendations about the referendums we heard about tonight and decide how to vote? And with that, I will pass the microphone on. 2 minutes. Who would like to give the closing statement? Somehow I knew that, Matthew.
So you've just had the opportunity to hear from the Chamber of Commerce and the Protect the People's Voice Coalition. We'd like to thank our counterparts for coming together with us and presenting their ideas about how Johnson City should be run. If you want to see more details about our positions, feel free to reach out to us, talk to us afterwards, or go to the website at protectthepeoplesvoice.org. Tennessee law mandates the bare minimum that municipalities must do to allow their citizens access to information and the democratic process. Some might compare Johnson City's charter to other cities around and say, well, we are out of line, we do too much. Some cities may feel that the bare minimum is okay for them, but we feel that these changes just aren't right for Johnson City. These are not partisan issues. Who doesn't want our city workers to have good, stable jobs? Who doesn't want to be able to give feedback on projects that are happening in their own neighborhood? Voting no protects the people's right to participate in their city without the city government making things more difficult. I want to end with a quote from founding father John Adams. Liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people who have a right and a desire to know. The people of Johnson City deserve that right to be informed and to have a say in what the government does. We can make a difference in Johnson City. You and I can make a difference for Johnson City. How? by talking with our friends and family about the facts we heard tonight, and by getting out and voting no August 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And one final closing statement.
Again, Casey, thank you for moderating tonight, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and I appreciate your thoughts on this, and they're well thought out. Again, the Chamber's approach to this is a very pragmatic and a common sense area, that we're looking to simplify a lot of our actions that we do as a community. For instance, in my mind, having the budget published in the newspaper twice, we feel is archaic and no longer necessary, because there's internet service and there's ways for people to view and look at the budget. We look at the reducing the ordinances from 3 to 2 is streamlining that process. We have many developments and many people who are wanting to do business in Johnson City, and it's a challenge for them to have to come in for all those different readings in addition to the zoning process that they had to go through. And they ask the questions of, why did I not have to do this in Kingsport when I did that development versus doing it in Johnson City? On having the city manager appoint people to a position, it allows the community to run more efficiently. From a chamber standpoint, the last thing we want are any delays in the planning department and the codes department. And if there's somebody out and we don't have that person in place, that is going to create a little more challenges for our businesses and our local organizations to do to prepare for their projects. And the last thing, changing the elections, we just feel streamlines the process for our community and allows us to have an opportunity to come to vote on our local candidates in August and our national candidates in November. Thank you very much for taking the time and being here tonight.
And I would like to offer the microphone one more time to Mr. Steve Willis to give a closing statement. And as Steve makes his way, I'd like to thank each of our 7 individual panelists for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you, Casey, and thanks to everyone for participating here tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Dana Jones with the Washington County Election Commission. Dana was fantastic to work with to get these items on the ballot in August, so a big shout out to Dana tonight. A couple of things I'd like to mention. The zoning issues related to our planning department. The referendum that's on the ballot would not change anything that currently happens in the planning department. For example, a zoning change requires a neighborhood meeting. It requires then passage by the planning commission prior to coming before the city commission. I'd also like to share with the public that you can go to our website at johnsoncitytn.org, and you can find a document related to these charter changes that outlines the factual information around that. One other thing I'd like to mention, just as a point of clarification, as it relates to the 90-day temporary appointments. As has been pointed out multiple times, many laws didn't exist in 1939, FMLA, for example. And I pointed out in my opening statement, in order to qualify for FMLA, an employee must be employed 1 year and work 1,250 hours. Unfortunately, with a workforce of over 1,000 employees, not every single person that has a medical situation qualifies for FMLA. And we are very blessed that under our city policy, we are able to extend leaves of absences to employees who do not meet that requirement as long as it is a legitimate situation. And that's another example of where that particular charter change would assist us in being efficient in our government. Thank you.
And thank you all for being here tonight. Once again, thanks to our panelists. That concludes our discussion. It's all for naught if we don't get out and vote, right? Spread the word on the information that you have. Early voting is underway right now through July 27th. Election Day, of course, is August 1st. And we appreciate your commitment to community here in Johnson City. Thank you and have a good night.